Hey everybody, we're uh, we're live here with Travala.com and ARK.io. My name is Shane Sibley. I'm the head of business development for Travala, and here we have Ray Alves. He's CEO of ARK, a layer one protocol that is a delegated proof of stake. They've got a ton going on in the ecosystem, and we're just going to dive into what they're doing, what the ecosystem has in the near, medium, and long term, and some of the projects that they're working on to really blast the news out there for NFTs, for gaming, and for the metaverse. So, with that being said, I'll pass it over to Ray to quickly introduce himself, and then we'll dive right in.
Thanks, Shane, and thank you for having me here and the whole Travala team for everything you guys are doing with ARK and for just the industry as a whole. We really appreciate it. My name is Ray Alvarez. As Shane said, I'm the CEO of ARK Ecosystem SCIC. We're a cooperative company that's headquartered in France, and for the last 6 years, this company has been responsible for creating different products that you see around the ARK ecosystem, starting the ARK public network and starting a bunch of other initiatives that you are seeing like play out right now in that sense. So I'm looking forward to the conversation, and for everyone watching from the ARK community, I'm looking forward on filling you in on what we have going on and what's going to be happening in the future.
Right on, Ray. Well, we're happy to have you, and looking forward to the conversation here. So, with that being said, let's dive right in here and let's talk about talk about ARK as a layer one solution. In the white paper, you mentioned that there's the blockchain has three problems currently, and that's with scalability, security, and decentralization. We're seeing like major players surface. They've got massive VC funding. And they're starting to compete with one another. How is ARK positioned to tackle this trilemma?
Yeah, so the trilemma isn't anything that's like brand new or specific like to just our industry, but in terms of blockchain, it's something that's been around since the beginning, and it's something that a lot of different projects have strived to fix. And you can even see right now a lot of the big players that are heavily funded by VCs like Solana, they have to make these sort of concessions and these choices on what they're going to do with their blockchain and their architecture. So for instance, you can have like fast transactions, scalability, and things like that. But then, then it's going to be heavily centralized. And then others are very decentralized, but then you have the problem with scalability, like you're seeing with Ethereum and the updates that they're currently producing in order to mitigate those problems. So in terms of ARK, we are a delegated proof of stake blockchain. We've been around for 6 years. And really, during that time when a lot of these chains were not even thinking about interoperability and working together, ARK was one of the first pioneers in that sort of like niche, saying that we're going to come out and we're going to try to create this system where it's interoperable, right? So what ended up happening, right, is that we never looked at it as let's find a way to bridge to Ethereum. Let's make sure that we're EVM compatible, that we can work within these different chains, right? We said everybody on ARK is going to have their own sovereign chain, and in a sense, that made a lot of sense at the early stages in the beginning, because people were saying, okay, well, if I'm running my business and I want to be able to send like a payment to a vendor, or if I want to be able to take transactions, I can't be waiting like 3-4 minutes for a transaction to go through. Or in the same sense, I can't be paying like an incredibly high gas cost like we see on Ethereum, like $40-50 to send the transaction through, because A, it's not good business, and B, that eats into all your costs, right? So we wanted to tackle that sort of sovereignty in that system. However, right now, what you see though is you see a whole lot of people, a whole lot of different chains. You see maybe 20, 30 plus EVM compatible chains. Like, the market is saturated with L1s right now. And what we think is the path forward is not necessarily saying we're out here and we're going to compete with Ethereum and Polygon and we're going to take away a piece of their pie, but more so, how do you end up working with these chains? How do you end up working with the ones that people are gravitating towards? And how do you make something successful from there?
Yeah, that's super interesting. And I mean, from from the perspective of coming on and talking about taking away the or being an Ethereum killer or being a Polygon killer, I think it's good to note that you're not really coming on here and saying you're going to be taking a piece of their pie, but finding ways of being interoperable with those other chains is
Mm-hmm.
going to be super important for the future of ARK as well. So that's great. Now, like,
Yeah.
kind of going into the funding rounds of what you guys have done in the past. You didn't get any VC funding or anything, did you?
No, ARK is one of the few L1s that when we started, we didn't go that route. There was no VC funding. There was no ICO. There was very early on in 2016, early 2017, what they call a token exchange campaign, where people were able to exchange different currencies such as Bitcoin, Lisk, and then receive ARK in exchange of that. So that's pretty much how ARK got their funding from the beginning, at least the SCIC did, right? And that was about 800K in funding at the time. So with 800K from 2016, and of course with good financial management, we've been able to stick around even today. The company is financially healthy, and we're here for the long term. What form it takes in the future, it's things that we're currently discussing, right? But at least in terms of like how we started, we didn't really even meet our TEC goal, our token exchange campaign goal. That totally failed. And to kind of be in the spot where we are now, where the project is still going, we've been able to create all these products, deliver all these products, create a chain, and have other products build on top of it. It's pretty crazy if you think about it, that a company would be able to like go from a failed funding through TEC and then be here. So we have no complaints on like where we are, and we definitely do understand that like a lot of the stuff, by foregoing VCs, you're not only giving up capital for funding, but you're also giving up a lot of connections and exposure, right? A lot of companies that went the VC route that are funded heavily by VCs, they do get a lot of exposure. It's easier for those companies to get on Coinbase. It's easier for all those companies to get put into different media sources like CoinDesk, right? A lot of it is pay to play, and a lot of it is, these companies are investing in, these companies that are promoting them are also investors. So, it's a balance that you have to walk.
Well, congratulations on the ecosystem growth. It's with I'd like to talk about a little bit about the token that powers it all, and that's
Yeah.
kind of what joins that's what joins ARK with Travala.
Hmm.
Travala has ARK listed as a payment method on Travala.com, so you can utilize our suite of inventory.
Great.
But what does the ARK token really represent within the ecosystem?
Yeah, within the ecosystem, it's a token for using and accessing the network, right? So the network works through delegated proof of stake, and those validators that are on the network, they get forging rewards for, confirming transactions and maintaining security in the network. So utility is always something that every community wants to know about, and it's something that everybody wants to like have in their project, right? I think a lot of the perception is a lot of people come to a project as investors and not really as tech or software people. And I think that's sometimes where misconceptions can be formed, and that's where people can get upset. For me, the ARK token itself is always being used from a utility standpoint. My background is in law, and obviously I wouldn't want to get involved in a project that was just pure speculation, right? So I think that for me, the token itself, we're always trying to find ways for it to be utilized. This is a main reason why we saw the Travala partnership as a big win for us, for people being able to use that token to book vacations, book activities, plan like their next their next goings, right? Was super important. So I think in the future, even we're looking into more things that are going to be building upon that. So it's more about us finding the right utility instead of just saying, we're just going to do X, Y, Z, and then price goes up. It's not about speculation for us. Like, we don't even look at the price of the token. The token is more of a means to use the system and access the products.
Now, before I ask you what the right type of utility is, delegated proof of stake has been mentioned a couple times now. Would you be able to unpack that for the community that's actually listening?
Yeah, so proof of stake, like when you have like different miners and different people running nodes, right? Delegated proof of stake are validators who are voted into the network to secure it, right? So the way it works in ARK is that anybody who holds any amount of ARK can vote for a different delegate slash validator, right? And those validators who have the most amount of votes that make it into the top 51 amount of votes, those people are essentially the people who are running the network, those 51 different validators. So those votes aren't locked in. They can be you can transfer your ARK at any time. You can unvote a delegate. You can vote for a different one at any time. It's just a way for the network to keep itself secure by having it decentralized in this manner. And in the same token, a lot of delegates, they offer services. So they say, okay, well, I'm going to be sharing 80% of my rewards. 20% is going to go to me to run the delegate, but this is what I'm offering you guys in return. I'm going to be writing articles on like XYZ, or I'm going to be creating a program similar to Folding at Home where you can participate and you can earn ARK, and then you can, come back and, basically support research for different diseases like Parkinson's and Alzheimer's, cancer research. And then there's people obviously that are developers that use their talent to contribute to the ecosystem, where they build plugins or they build games or they build different applications to be used, and they package that into their like delegate services.
So coming back to the ARK token and the type of utility that you think is right for the ecosystem, can you give me some examples of what that looks like?
Yeah. So for me, it's always been about using our products and then the token be a source for those products. Like depending on, like, for instance, if we're using like, we have a product called Launcher where you can launch your own blockchain. Early on, we said, well, we want a lot of people to use this. So we want to do a subscription model. We want people to like pay like ARK in order to launch their own blockchain. So that's a way that the token would have utility. Now, and I'll be completely honest, like I think that in the future, it's more about finding products that have like a strong market fit. Like I said, like layer ones, it's a packed field, right? And we're not going to be convincing, Starbucks and Disney to switch over from Polygon to come build everything on ARK. And that's just the reality of the situation. It's 2022. The blockchain layer ones, we've been building them since 2016, and for 6 years, like if the adoption hasn't come, there has to be a different way to move forward, and that way forward isn't just through like continuing to build out layer one, right? It's also continuing to find products that have a market fit that can actually bring value to regular users. And that's like why the Travala model we feel works really well, because you guys are actually offering like a strong service that people enjoy and that people like. So for ARK, it's about finding what that product is and about capitalizing it in a crowded field.
Yeah, right on. And I know that you're a man of many trades. You've got a background in legal and blockchain, and I wanted to kind of dive into some of the content that you're building as well, because I know you've rebranded the Market Square,
Right.
which was prior used for blockchain applications, but now it's more of a content source for NFTs, gaming, and metaverse. So
Yes.
we really appreciate the piece that you put out for the Travel Tiger Club. But what sparked that rebrand? Is that something is that kind of setting the stage for the medium and longer term of the ARK ecosystem?
Well, that was one of the first things that we were seeing is when we were creating Market Square and like really, really far back into its development. At first, it was built totally on top of the ARK blockchain, but during internal testing, like doing basic things like setting up your profile and changing your profile, updating it, um, we were like, this is like a little bit too complex for, regular users to be like interacting with the blockchain and being able to do all this stuff. And we said, does it really need this sort of blockchain application? And, do we really need to shoehorn that in there? And really what we thought from there was like, well, no, we don't. It can just be a regular website. And then we can add features later on that have to do with like Web3. So what ended up happening was that, yes, we started gaining traction. We made over 100 different partnerships with a lot of big companies in our space, including Travala. And during that time, what we noticed was that a lot of companies don't want to have to maintain another social channel on top of the ones they're already maintaining, right? Especially teams that were starting out and a lot smaller. They maybe have one person that manages like the Twitter, their YouTube, their Instagram, their Discord. So to give them an extra one on top of that, we felt like, oh, okay, this isn't going to work. Like it's too much for people, right? So we want people to actually use the platform and come to it. So later on, we were like, okay, well, what's something that is going on in our industry right now that we feel is something that's not going to go away, something that's going to be here for the next 5 years, 10 years. And when we look at everything, it's honestly, I really do think like NFTs, that the metaverse stuff, that the gaming and Web3, I think that's still very nascent. It's still in its infancy, but I do think that has legs to be around for the future. And that's kind of what prompted the rebrand, to focus in more on this content, to focus in more on stuff that was turning MSQ into more of a media site and promoting this content first and foremost, and be a source for it. Because we kind of see that it's more fun. People love to talk more about virtual reality and Web3 gaming as a whole. NFTs and art as a whole are just more captivating, right? And the metaverse, we don't really know where it's going to go. Is it going to be built out by Meta, Facebook, and those companies, or are there going to be decentralized systems and companies in place that are going to build it out? So we do think that there's a lot of potential there, and we wanted to make sure, like, if we weren't the first ones there, we wanted to make sure we were one of the first, covering and kind of promoting that sector.
Yeah, and I think that's a pretty astute observation, is noticing that not a lot of people have the resources to be able to upkeep the social media, and like having a valuable source where people can go and source out the information to do a lot of their own research on a site like yours is, I think it's great, especially the fact that you're kind of developing a bit of a niche.
Yeah.
Like getting into NFTs. There's last year's Euphoria was mainly based around art. Even if you got on some of the Discord channels, they would be saying how great a piece looked and how sick it is. But what evolved out of that was a lot of community and a lot of and there all obviously is built-in utility. What do you think, or what are some of the leaders in the NFT space right now that you saw evolve out of last year's Euphoria?
I mean, definitely you can't talk about like NFTs without talking about like Bored Apes, for example, Cool Cats, Azuki, like all these projects that are like kind of at the forefront right now. It's because they continue to over deliver to their communities, and they kind of kept building upon like their utility and how they were going to provide value with their NFTs. It's a way that the same kind of thing that was happening with the Travala Tiger Club. That was like kind of what prompted us to write that piece, not just because you guys are a partner, but because you guys are offering like NFTs that have an actual real world utility in their service. So, for example, when we were looking at the Travala Tiger Club, we kind of like right now we kind of see like parallels with the stuff that's going on Reddit with avatars, because it's not that people are like going crazy for Reddit avatars because like there's some like monumental Mona Lisa-esque piece of art that they need to have. It's because they enjoy using Reddit as a product, and they spend their time there. So for them, it's more akin to buying like a skin in their favorite video game, or, throwing an extra $10. And that's why we think like projects like the Travala Tiger Club took off. That's why Reddit and their avatar system is taking off. And that's why projects that are at the forefront of the space right now are really focused and laser focused on delivering utility for their NFT. So it's not just a pretty picture or a JPEG, but it's like the type of utility that they attach to it. So I would say like maybe only a few percentage of all the products out there are actually thinking that way, whereas other ones are just trying to, just sell art and, which is fine too, but they're not really thinking about it in terms of like community building and delivering utility.
Yeah, and that was something that we were majorly focused on, as well as trying to create an extension of our loyalty program. But how do we create a community out of the Travel Tiger Club, and how do we provide value back to our NFT holders as well? So we want to continuously build on that as much as possible, as you alluded to before. We do think that's going to be in the most. We'll see the most success when we can drive as much value to the holders as possible. With the conversation of the metaverse, you talk to a ton of different projects. How do you think that NFTs are going to be interoperable with the metaverse?
Yeah, I think that a lot of the projects that are out there now, we're kind of seeing how some of the major players are kind of utilizing them, such as the Sandbox. They've recently had their season 3 launch, and they kind of made it into like a battle pass type system where people complete different quests. But what was the most interesting thing about that is how they partnered with different NFT projects. So like, for instance, if you have a Bored Ape, or if you have a Cool Cat, or a World of Woman NFT, for example, you can go and play as your avatar within the game. And I think that's something that they really nailed that, because a lot of people, what they like the most when they join these types of systems is they like to have their assets be transferable. So it's like you might buy your favorite game, and then in 5 years that game shuts down, and all that stuff that you grinded for, it's gone, right? But if you're looking forward to like using your NFT that you have a strong connection to, it's your identity in Web3, and you can use it in like this metaverse, and then you can go ahead and take it and use it in that metaverse. It's a win-win situation, because it transfers value back into the hands of actual individuals, instead of behind like firewalled behind these companies, right? So it's more of like, me as an individual, as a consumer, I can have like my NFT, and I can have my in-game assets, and I can transfer that back and forth. So the metaverse platforms that are doing it well are the ones that are thinking that way, the ones that are actually providing that to their users.
Yeah, and it's going to be super interesting as some of these newer ones start releasing their platforms as well. The ones that are built on the gaming engines, whether it be Unreal or Unity. I'm sure that you've talked to a lot of these, but how far do you think we're out for getting any sort of mainstream adoption to the metaverse?
I think it's pretty far, honestly. Like, if I was looking ahead, I know that the Decentraland and Sandbox and all these different services are doing a good job within Web3, but I haven't really seen like this huge push of like regular people coming from like the mainstream and jumping into these platforms. A lot of it has to do with the ways that NFTs, kind of left a sour taste in people's mouth, right? A lot of people on the mainstream gaming like scene despise NFTs. A lot of them don't understand it, but a lot of them also see that 90% of all these projects have been like either rug pulls or scams, or they see people flexing like, I spent X amount of money on this NFT, and that kind of turns people away. So I think in terms of like metaverse platforms, I think that my prediction is going to be, it's not going to come from like some of the platforms that we're seeing today within our space. It's going to come from like a really good AAA developer that's going to get it right, and that's going to understand it. The problem right now is that a lot of those big companies, these AAA companies, they don't understand it yet, or they're like in the very early stages of trying it out. So, and this taken into fact that, they're also getting a lot of pushback from their consumers and audience, right? Whenever they do try it out. So all this stuff kind of delays us a bit, but I do think in the future, especially with all the advancements we're seeing with like VR headsets and the new MetaQuest 3 and the MetaQuest Pro that's coming out, I think that we're kind of getting there to that point where people are actually trying it out and they're saying, wow, this is like next level. I want to see where this goes. And it's like more serious. Like 5 years ago, you used to go to Dave and Buster's and put on a VR headset. And you're like, all right, that was gimmicky, but it was funny and it was fun, whatever. But now you put on a VR headset and you can have meetings with people across the world. You can use it for exercise. You can use it to play games with like groups of people. So I think we're getting to a point where the technology is evolving, but we haven't, the mindset and the strategies haven't caught up to it on how we need to implement it.
Yeah, I've actually got one of those Oculus headsets myself, and I've had a few meetings in there in different virtual worlds.
Right.
It is pretty interesting. I mean, it's something that I'm not used to, but
Mm-hmm.
as you overcome it, I mean, it's a pretty nice, peaceful area to go and have a meeting as well. And you're not
Yeah.
sitting there. Well, you are staring at a screen, but you feel completely immersed.
Exactly. And that's what makes it fun. I mean, as long as you don't get like motion sick or anything, right? So
Yeah, I was listening to a Gary Vee podcast last night, and he was basically saying that there's a lot of larger companies, and let's say publicly traded companies, that have an interest in NFTs, but I mean, everyone's a little bit scared. There is a risk, like a reputation or financial risk of even launching something that could fall flat on its face right now. And
right.
there's given where the market's at, it may not be the right time for them to even launch it. But I know that everybody's actually starting to take a look at it and put their talent teams into researching the proper avenues for the NFTs. And I think that's going to be a large case in metaverse development as well, is how larger companies start to interact with Web3.
Right.
So until we actually start seeing that mainstream adoption, or some of those larger institutions dabble in Web3, that's when we can start seeing it play out in the metaverse too.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, we're already seeing a lot of different even countries like start investing into this like type of technology. Like South Korea, for instance, is launching government programs where people are going to be able to pay utility bills through the metaverse. There's other countries like Japan, which created an NFT collection of their of their Japanese postal service, and they sold stamps. So I think it's more about finding how does an NFT fit within like cultural norms and in a way that it's not like people can access them without spending a large amount of money. B, you can even make it more simple where people can use credit card, right, or cash instead of having to use crypto. And C, you do it in a way where it's not something that's like, okay, a huge speculation like type market. And the reason, and I point to the Japanese stamps example, the reason that works so well is because Japan has like a really high tolerance for collectibles. They love collecting different things, and stamps is one of those categories that has like a fervent amount of collectors. So when they put like not a huge amount of NFTs out, maybe like 300 packs of stamps to be sold as NFTs, like they flew. They were sold out in a matter of minutes, and it's because people have a strong desire to kind of work with those things. So these big companies that are going to be like pushing into the metaverse, and these countries that are pushing into the metaverse, like they have to understand like the cultural norms, and they have to understand like what do people really want. And I think the case with Reddit that we were talking about back there, that's a good example of something that these companies should be taking a close look at, because they didn't use Reddit, they didn't use NFTs to create like their business. They used it to supplement other parts of their business and build upon it.
Mm-hmm. And that's interesting take there. I mean, you mentioned that was Japan that was launching the packs of stamps.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay, yeah, very interesting. Um, and so, given the like the NFTs in the metaverse, you coming back to like the development of Market Square and being a content creator, how is that going to play into the interoperability on ARK?
I think for MSQ, it's being developed by a company within the ARK ecosystem called Ardent. So in terms of like NFT coverage and all the stuff that we're doing with that, we're building up our audience using that content, and we're bringing in different communities, and we're writing pieces about them, and then in turn they're coming back and following MSQ, and they're watching our content as well. if I could just be like a analytics nerd for like a second, like in the last 2 months, like we've gotten over 1.5 million views on TikTok and over 500K views on YouTube alone. And that was done in like a 2 month period. Whereas before, when we were working with like the Market Square YouTube and we were only focusing on like the crypto niche, it was a lot harder to grow. I feel right now, because our topic is so popular and so broad in that sense in terms of technology, I think it's been much easier. So to answer your question about how that works in, I think that MSQ, recently we added Web3 connectivity, like you can sign in with your MetaMask wallet. Later on, we're going to be at what you can do right now with that is you can go to different pages and you can vote them up or down, right? Depending on if you like the project. Later on, we're going to be adding more features very soon that you're going to be able to sign in with your wallet and do different functions. So we definitely want to reward people for using the platform, and we think that NFTs are a great way to do that. So for us, I think that in the future, it might evolve into even a bigger product, or it might evolve to work with other products, and we can offer those sort of incentives for people, because I think that the nice thing about it is that we're kind of building up the audience for it, and then we're kind of seeing a great return on like the content, and we're seeing a great return on like the people reading the articles. So because of those things, we're kind of like primed to say, okay, we're going to be focused on, really growing this and making it into something. And then later on, yeah, it can definitely help support like different ideas and different products.
Fantastic. Well, Ray, I really appreciate you coming on today and having this chat with us. I think anybody that's watching can take away, go to msq.io, do a little bit of research into the content that these guys are delivering. It is really insightful. And if you know of any NFT projects that are also looking at developing any utility, make sure that you reach out to the ARK team, put together some collab on some content, and get the word out there as well.
Yeah, thank you, Shane, and we're really happy to be working with you guys as well, and with the ARK community and Travala. It's been a great partnership. And if you're already going to msq.io and you haven't checked out like the piece we made on the Travala Tiger Club, I definitely recommend you to go take a look at it, especially if you're a different project or business in the space and you want to see how a company took an NFT program and idea and made it work within their business instead of just saying this is going to be totally separate. I implore you to read that article because it's a pretty good one.
Thanks a lot for that, Ray.
Yeah,
and
no worries.
Appreciate everybody hopping on today and listening, and we'll catch you next time.
All right. Thank you, everybody. Take care.
Thanks, everyone.